much has been said about the fact that there's an existing revised penal code provision on fake news. I hasten to add there hasn't been any prosecution or conviction on that basis of that provision of the law. And maybe this is because this is the reason why it hasn't been challenged in court. Because before you can challenge a statute as being unconstitutional, you must have an actual case or controversy. The fact that it is for all intents and purposes fake law probably indicates the position on the part of the executive that one should not prosecute on the basis of a law that is or may be declared as being unconstitutional. On the point again of government officials, again, the requirement of equal protection of the law is that the intent of the law or the purpose of the law must be germane to the legislation.
Sir,
what we are upholding is the truth.
We will go back and forth with this.
Yes, Your Honor, but what we are upholding is the truth. And when you uphold the truth, it matters not whether you're private or you're public. Thank you, Madam.
I agree. But then there are certain requirements of us as government officials that are not required of private individuals. What will you say? Are you saying now that private individuals should also submit salience? Should they also be punished for plunder in all these other cases because the law should be applied equally to all? Of course not. We have certain responsibilities. And even in the private sector, if you're a member of a corporate organization, there are also certain rights you waive as a commitment to that organization. But anyway, moving forward, again, you're welcome to attend that. And as I said, Mr. Roque, we've always been, most of the time, on the same side of the fence. Correct? We are
That's
here
true, Madam Chair.
to defend the truth. Nandito tayo para dyan. At ito namang posisyon natin, hindi naman panghabang buhay. Ang inaalagaan natin dito ay ang kinabukasan rin na kung sino man ang nandyan, yung mga batas na nakakatulong talaga sa ating bansa ang manaig. Kaya tama kayo. Pagdating sa deliberasyon nitong Senate Bill 1680, sabihin ninyo na useless ang Revised Penal Code 154, siguro dapat pati yan ma-repeal na rin. At ang 1680, wag natin ituloy. Ang opinion nyo ay mahalaga. Hindi lamang dahil kayo ay spokesperson ng Presidente, kundi dahil matagal na ninyong pinag-aaralan ng batas, kayo ay practitioner, kayo ay Pilipino. So, itutuloy po natin ang pagdinig na yan, pero sa ngayon siguro, pagdamutan na natin ang opinion nitong ating mga foreigners na alam naman natin ay sandali lamang dito, pero malaki po ang responsibilidad din nila.
May I now ask to be excused because it's an 11 o'clock hearing and I checked earlier with the Malacanang Press Corps if they will mind if I do my press briefing here in the Senate, and they said yes because apparently they all have beats to meet, and unless I make my briefing in Malacanang, they will not have their stories. All the stories will be submitted by the Senate beat.
You know, Secretary Roque, you will be sorely missed if you're not there, so please, you are excused, and thank you for your presence
here today. Thank you very much,
today.
Madam Chair. Thank you for your time and indulgence.
Okay, moving on. May we begin with Facebook, perhaps?
Thank you very much again, Madam Chairman. So as I mentioned, my name is Simon Milner. I've recently moved to this region, having worked at Facebook for 6 years. Up until 2 weeks ago, I was working in London and being responsible for Facebook's public policy team covering the Middle East and Africa, as well as the UK and Ireland. I was excited about the opportunity to come to this hearing so soon after beginning my role, because having talked with my colleagues in this region, including Ms. Devi, you're going to hear from shortly, I know that as a company we care about the Philippines, we care about its people, and we care about this issue. And the fact that I'm new to the Philippines does not mean that Facebook is new to the Philippines. And you're going to hear from Claire shortly about the work that she has been doing and with our colleagues with a range of partners to disrupt the purveyors of disinformation and false news without undermining freedom of expression. And that's why this is an issue which is more difficult, frankly, than other issues that we try to tackle, including things like bullying, harassment, terrorism, and other problems. This is a more complex issue. It's one which is much more nuanced, and what we can be absolutely certain of is there is no silver bullet. There is no one solution that will fix this problem. It is multifaceted, and it's definitely one in which we are deploying what we call the 4 Ps. So our policies address it, our products, and that's what I will mainly be talking about. We need a lot of people to address it, and I'd like to talk a little bit more about that, and then partnerships. So it's policies, products, people and partnerships is our multi-pronged approach. If I could have the next slide, please. We're very keen to build an informed community on Facebook. We know that that's an important responsibility that we have, but there are some people who want to use our platform to do the opposite, to actually ensure that people are not well informed, to sow division within societies, including here in the Philippines. And so what we have is a four-pronged approach that are laid out here to try to do this. First of all, we're about stopping bad actors from using our service. This is not about your least favorite actor in Hollywood. This is a technical term that's used within our industry to talk about people who are malicious, people who want to use services like Facebook, and we're going to hear from Google shortly, use online services with ill intent, for criminal reasons often. We call them bad actors. So we want to stop those bad actors using our service, and often those people will use our service with fake accounts. So we're happy to answer more questions and explain more about what we're doing to address the problem of fake accounts, hacked accounts, issues around account security on our service. The second area of work is to disrupt economic incentives. Much false news and misinformation is not political in nature, but actually economic. It's people who are trying to use salacious and sensational headlines to get people to click on those, get them off Facebook and into a low-quality environment where there's lots of what we would call spammy advertising, and to encourage people to click on those so that person can make money. Another phrase you'll have heard is clickbait. That kind of content is actually economically driven, and what we are doing in a number of ways, and we're again happy to explain more about this, is to disrupt those economic incentives. And the third area is newsfeed. So the most important product that we think is at play here is our newsfeed product. One of the reasons why you're right, Filipinos use Facebook for more time during the day, I've already seen, is because of the traffic. So people, when they're sitting in the traffic here in Manila, maybe the president's spokesperson will be doing the same shortly. If you've got a couple of hours on a journey, what do? You go onto your favorite social media app. We're very pleased that for 66 million Filipinos, that's Facebook, and therefore people do use newsfeed a lot. One of the things we've done a lot of work on is to think about how we rank content on newsfeed to ensure that people are much more likely to see the kind of high-quality content early on in their newsfeed, and that's the content that they're interacting with. Both public content, but also content from their friends and family. So we've done a lot of work around newsfeed ranking. I'm now going to turn to my colleague, Ms. Stevie, to talk to you about the work we're doing with communities and partners to try and empower people to address this problem.
Thank you, Simon, and Madam Chair, it is good to see you again, and thank you for having us. For those that don't know me, I've been working in the Philippines for 10 years. Initially, when I started working here, I was working on digital literacy, travelling to barangays and setting up centres, and that was just about teaching people how to physically use technology. And what I saw is that Filipinos have a natural affinity and amazing use of it. What I see since I moved to Facebook 2.5 years ago is that digital literacy has evolved, and now we have to not just teach people how to use the technology, but to understand what they see. My whole role is around local partnerships and empowering communities, so I want to take you very quickly through some of the things we've been working on. First of all, at a broad reach, working on public education, so using the reach of our tools to get information out there, starting in 2016 with the launch of our Safety and Bullying Prevention Hub with resources for students, teachers and parents. Then last We've been working with many journalists, first of all on journalist safety. So our team researched, we went from Cebu to Manila to Davao to speak directly to journalists about their concerns. And from that research, we've made changes to the product that have been rolled out internationally, including updates to our harassment policies, and that came directly from hearing from journalists here in the Philippines. Secondly, we see an opportunity as Facebook bring together people from the media across the region, and last year we launched our news literacy working group with representatives from the Philippines, and we had them come together to work with us on the future of news. That group will be reconvening in April in Australia this month, and we continue to work with them. This is an ongoing process, and we need to hear from our partners. If I can have the next slide. Because we want to go further than just our products and our policies, we see in the 21st century learning the importance of equipping our students and, of course, the teachers with the ability to think critically. With all this information that is coming to you, how do you understand what you're seeing online? How do you distinguish between what is true, what is false, but also the nuance of opinion and perception? We also added to this something that I care very deeply about, which is empathy. So even if you look at all the information and you understand the source and where it's coming from, what will be the impact of you sharing that? What is your responsibility in the Filipino community to create a positive social space? We're working with Globe Telecom, who have an amazing program that they've been running for the last 2 years that's reached more than 40,000 students, and we added an extra module to their outreach specifically on critical thinking and empathy that we piloted and is now available to teachers. We've also been doing a much more in-depth pilot with Mano Amiga, a small non-for-profit school, which was a 5-week intensive program with years 7 and 8 to understand how we could match these skills into the learning objectives of teachers and build it into the values education that the Philippines values so highly. We've taken that and we're now working with DepEd to understand how we can best ensure that these critical skills get maximum reach to students and teachers. If I can have the next slide. And then finally, I want to talk about what we're doing in 2018. I was here again 4 weeks ago, again connecting with various partners to understand what do we do next. And what we heard is that there is this need for this to be built into as many of our outreach and programs as possible. So we've been partnering with DTI on training for women entrepreneurs and small businesses. And then DICT will be assisting us to get education around safety, critical thinking, out to the 2,400 centres that they now have around the Philippines. And we're working with them on the best possible way to get that information out there. We also heard very loudly that there was a concern for Filipinos living overseas. So working with OWA, we're looking at creating a localised video in English, Tagalog, Visaya and various local dialects that they will be able to see before they leave the Philippines to understand the positive side of social media and also how to discern what they see. And finally, in January this year, I ran the first trial. I provided training to an NGO based in Singapore, where I live, that outreaches with business education to Filipino foreign workers. And we ran a session on safety and news literacy. And we're taking that as a model and looking for other non-profits right around the world and embassies that work with foreign workers to ensure that this education can get out as far as possible. So I just want to finish by saying this is something that we as Facebook and me personally care very deeply about, and we do this always with partners. So we're open to hearing and understanding where we can work with people on this issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Claire. You mentioned there are 6 tips that you publish in your page to be able to guide our netizens and be able to empower them and figure out which one is fake news and which one is real. Can you mention those 6 steps?
Okay, so some of the tips that we look at there, the first one that we released was often that false news will have large, grand claims in the headlines. We also encourage people to look back and see what the original source of the story is, so look for other people that have shared the story. Sorry. We also look at the URL. So often it may have a false or misleading URL that people see when they first get.
Okay, that's a little bit technical. Explain. Okay. I mean, this is for the benefit of our listeners. Okay, how will an ordinary citizen determine if a URL is legitimate or not?
Absolutely. Thank you for pulling me up on that. With a URL, often there is a fake or a version of a popular site that you see. So we call out in the tip an example of one, and we encourage them to look closely in the top of your browser what the URL is or the link that you click on.
Okay. Can you show us an example there? For example, like a URL of like a CNN or whatever, but instead of like Al Jazeera, they'll say Al Jazeera Network or Al Jazeera TV, but not necessarily.
That's correct, with a dash, or it goes through to something else. The example we used in the tip to really hit home was notveryreliablenews.org, because we really wanted to.
Very reliable. Now that's
we really wanted to
literal,
emphasize and get people's attention. But I would be happy for anyone's interested to share the full 6 tips and the illustrations that we've got after the hearing.
Okay, like give me another tip.
In terms of finding fake news?
Yes.
So we're also looking at in the headlines, often there is extensive exclamations or claims. So whereas standard news sites will often have a very clear, concise headline about what the news is.
But have you employed this yourself? I mean, if you see that, what action do you take in Facebook? I mean, it's clearly a dubious URL. Do you block it? What do you do?
Absolutely. Funnily enough, I have a personal story on this because my husband would often sit next to me on the couch and say, "Have you heard this?" And I have now trained him that he will start saying, "Oh, hold on, I'm just checking what this is. No, it's all right, I'm not going to share that story with you." So with these things, I think as each person learns and as each of the students we work with learn, they become an advocate. As we worked with Manu Amiga's school, one of the questions that we got from the students was, how do we bring this subject up with our parents and teachers? Because often we see them looking at these things and getting confused. So again, having very clear tips for them about headlines, about looking at sources, about looking at how many people have reported the news, the dates, are things that we see works.
No, I understand, but does this go against your policy, let's say, in curtailing, not to curtail freedom of expression? Meaning, if it's clearly a fake news site, do you have a directive from your corporate leadership to take it down, to block it? Or do you just allow it, but your stance would be to educate the public to be able to discriminate?
That's an excellent question because it gets to the heart of the challenge here. We do not think it's right for Facebook to be the arbiter of truth. We do not have a policy that says you can only post things on Facebook which are true. Because actually you imagine how difficult it would be for us to discern that and to decide it. However, what we do encourage people to do is also to let us know if they see something that they believe is false news. You can report it to us. It doesn't mean that that's then against our terms, but what we then will use is as a signal that this is the kind of content that we want to reduce its distribution, push it down the news feed, mean it gets seen less. And also, one of the things we've also done is partner with third-party fact checkers to also help us do that. So it's not to determine content that should be necessarily taken down, but it is about content that which should get lower distribution because it's less good, it's poor quality content on our platform. Now, this is difficult. It's a very difficult area because I know in talking with policymakers elsewhere, their view is, well, why don't you just take it down? And actually, when we say to them, how often have you seen a report in a mainstream publication, including perhaps some of the ones around this table, which you believe is wrong? Do you think that therefore we should be taking that down because you tell us that's wrong? So in our view, that's not the right judgment for a platform like ours to be taking, however uncomfortable that might be. But if we get enough signal, both from the users of our platform, from our third-party fact-checking partners, then we can, as I say, impact the distribution of that content, meaning it's less likely to be seen by as many people.
Okay, sir. Actually, there's a report by a certain Jonathan Ong and Jason Cabanes.
DZXL Special Coverage. DZXL Special Coverage.
a very difficult thing that you have to balance. But what efforts are you exerting, at least humanly possible, without necessarily curtailing any particular rights and freedom of expression, to clean up this environment and protect users also from such disinformation? Can you tell us?
Absolutely, and to be clear, that's a fake account is against Facebook's terms. We do not allow people to have an account on Facebook where they are not, which is inauthentic. And so, irrespective of whether that inauthentic or fake account is being used to spread fake news, we can act on it, and we do that. And some of that is based on. Do you want to ask another question before I complete, or you were wanting to come in? Shall I complete the point, or?
Yes, sir. Please
Okay.
go ahead, and I'm going to
Okay.
ask you to define a fake account for
Okay.
us as
Happy to do
determined
that.
by Google,
By Facebook. It's fine.
by Facebook and Google.
Okay. So we use a combination of factors. It used to be that a lot of what we were based on was people telling us. So based on reports, but increasingly we are using technology, including what we call machine learning. So we are looking at attributes associated with fake accounts, and that could be the name on the account, but it's much more likely to be other kinds of behavior. I hope you will understand why I don't want to talk in detail about that kind of behavior, because we don't want to tip off the bad actors about the kind of things we are looking for. But it's the kind of, because we can look for certain attributes and behaviors, means we can attack this at scale. So we don't just take down the odd account, we can take tens of thousands of fake accounts down. And this is an important priority for us, because, as I say, it's often fake and inauthentic accounts which are being used to propagate false news.
So, sir, in a day, about how many, on average, do you take down? I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean in just one region or one country, but on average in the world.
I understand why people would like us to have more numbers on this, and we will have more numbers soon. You'll have
But in
seen,
the Philippines, do you see a pattern, sir?
look, the Philippines is in some, although it's a very big market for us. You mentioned earlier it's our 6th biggest market in terms of the number of people using
So
the
we're
service.
one of the biggest markets.
One of the biggest markets.
Okay.
But the kinds of things that we see here are actually quite similar to what we see elsewhere. And this is not a phenomenon which is unique to the Philippines. So people who want to use our platform for ill, both state and non-state actors will use similar kinds of techniques, including creating fake accounts at scale. So I'm afraid I do not have a number that we can share with you about how many we've taken down in respect to the Philippines, but we are expecting to be able to share more information about this globally in the coming months.
Actually, sir, there's one particular unique incident here where a blogger, for example, posted something against a particular public personality, and her posts were taken down. But these were actually based on historical facts. I think I've mentioned this to you, Ms. Claire, when we met. You were able to restore that. Did you issue an apology or an explanation as to why you did that?
So anytime we get a report and we make a mistake, we do issue an apology. I think in each of the case, they're often very nuanced, and understanding the background is important. But it is something that, first of all, I think any fake accounts that are reported to us, we take action on and we investigate. Where we make a mistake, where we get the content wrong, we issue an apology and we will restore the content.
Okay, the media practitioners that we have here, I'm sure you have a lot of questions in mind, and if you'd like to ask it, you can address it to me. If you would like me, I can ask them for you, to our resource persons here, since anyway they're here now. But perhaps while we have them here, I can ask Ms. Hontiveros. Okay, or maybe Google, if you can. Okay. Google, you know what? I think that you're one of the most important tools that we have, and not just for me personally, but my colleagues here. We usually Google certain information to verify, but how are you able to filter also information that is posted on the web?
Yeah, Madam Chair, thank you for having me.
And also, how do you determine, for example, I type in a certain thing, malnutrition in the Philippines. how is Google able to select what the top search is? Is this something that is paid for? Is this something based on the number of visits in that particular site? How do you determine the top posts?
Yeah, so I think there are a few questions noted in your questions, Madam Chair. So thank you again for having me here today. I think to answer your questions directly, you can't pay your way up to the top of the search rankings. You can, however, buy ads to show that you want.
Sir, can you speak closer to the mic? Okay, can we begin again?
Sure.
Can we begin?
Yeah. To answer your questions directly, you cannot pay your way up to the top of the search rankings in Google. All the ranking in the search results are determined by an algorithm that takes into account various factors. One of the factors
it's determined by
an algorithm.
An algorithm. Okay, the algorithm is.
And one of the factors that we take into account very, very seriously is the importance of trusted and high quality content. So,
okay.
For instance,
could you say
content.
that importance of content?
Yes.
Who determines that?
So, for instance, we look at authority. Newsrooms, for instance, are treated as sources of authority, which is why you will see that we search for breaking news, for instance, in the Philippines. We will reflect. You see that the top search results will all be reflecting those on newsrooms. And I think this is related to the question on how then do we ensure that the users are getting to the right content, as you put it, right? I think if you go back to our mission statement, which is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful to users, that is our remit to our users, right? And to that regard, it is important to us to continue to provide high quality and useful information to the users. So we do that in a number of ways. Specifically with the newsrooms, we work very closely with them to make sure that they have an understanding of the latest technology.
Okay, so you have a newsroom.
Yes.
Okay, your newsroom is composed of, do you have one in the Philippines?
No, we work with newsrooms.
You work with newsrooms?
Yes.
So you work with, let's say, ABS-CBN?
Yes, indeed.
How exactly do you interact with them? Can you please lay out the procedure here?
So I'll mention two main things we work with them. So one thing is through our Google News Lab, we work with news publishers to help them produce high quality journalistic content. So what do I mean by that? So a lot of times users are now demanding for interactive and data-centric content in which they can better understand the issues they're looking for. So this, for instance, we run workshops to help them understand how we use technology to produce news stories that are reflected using data, using trends, to help users get better context of the issues they're looking for. We also teach through partnerships with newsrooms such as, if I have my data here correctly, we recently ran one with Cebu Sunstar to train journalists and journalist students on the use of fact-checking tools so that they can also fact-check before they publish a news article, which allows then users to be very clear, right? That, oh, this article has been fact-checked and these are accurate data, which they can trust.
So ABS-CBN, do you have a representative that deals directly with search engines like Google? Are you aware of that, ma'am?
We have our digital unit that deals with Google, but I'm not sure in what extent and capacity. We are also working with Google about the Google News Lab. However, it's more on how to use the Google site for certain things, but not that extensive. So I cannot really answer that.
Mr. Lee, so do you know anybody from ABS that you work with, or GMA even, or Eagle Broadcasting?
Yeah. I do not work directly with the newsrooms, but I'm happy to come back to you with information on exactly kind of workshops and the names of the journalists that we work with.
Okay, sir. Now, I would like you to either verify or dispel this. So you're telling me that it's not necessarily something you can pay your way through to the top. Okay, you're saying that. It will be based on an algorithm, maybe based on the number of searches and the credibility of the site. But you have a person determining this, not an AI. I mean, I just want to be...
No, there is no person to determine what gets to the top of the ranking. It's done by a set of criteria determined by the machine. If you think about the millions of websites out there...
Okay, so a machine determines this. Okay, but you cannot deny the fact that if somebody pays for an ad or somebody pays for an article, you can actually make that search more visible. Am I correct? Maybe not at the top, but it will come out. Do you have that service?
Yes, but it depends on, we have very strict policies on what gets to be served as an ad. So misrepresentative content, for instance, will not pass our strict policy to be served as an ad to a user.
Okay, so do you have an office here that an individual can go to? I mean, because I need to know to what extent you operate as a media entity in the Philippines. Okay, so let's say I would like to post something of relevance. It's based on fact, but it's obviously something I would like to push for. Can I go to Google and then discuss this with you, pay a certain price so that, and a certain amount?
So let's take, for instance, if you are a health authority and you want to spread and inform users on the need to, say, have a healthy diet. Indeed, you can work with Google to develop an ad campaign to inform users on the value of healthy eating. That is definitely doable. However, if your claim is that eating rice will cause you cancer, that is clearly not something we will allow as an ad.
Okay, we've mentioned this already, that the Philippines is one of the top social media users, and Facebook, Google is like very much, well, omnipresent here. Now, I'd like to know, how much did you earn from your exposure here in the Philippines? Facebook, how much did you earn last year based on users from the Philippines and your exposure?
I appreciate the question, but I'm afraid I cannot give you an answer on that. We do not break down our revenues by individual countries to be able to provide you with that number. You can see our accounts are public, and they do provide information about how much we make in the major regions of this world, but not individual countries.
Okay, so for example, worldwide, how much did you earn last year?
I recall, but I can confirm in writing, that our total revenues are around $40 billion last year.
Okay, so 40 billion gross, right? Or is this
gross? That's right.
That's gross revenue. Now, perhaps if there are anybody here, if the Philippines is like one of the top 3 users of 40 billion, I'm sure we can make some sort of it will be very difficult. But have you paid any taxes in the Philippines?
So we pay tax on we obey the tax rules in every country in which we operate. Again, we can provide information afterwards in terms of what that means in respect of the Philippines, because we do have operations here. But I don't have that number to hand, I'm afraid.
Okay.
I understood we were here to talk.
Value also the importance of the Philippine market. And I know that your presence here is sort of signifying that. But you should also help us.
Yes, and indeed we've had an office. Our office in the Philippines opened in, I think, March 2016. That office is mainly focused on helping businesses in the Philippines, large and small, but particularly large ones, make the best use of our platform, both to market their products and services to people in the Philippines, but also abroad. And indeed, that's a big part of the work that Ms. Devi and colleagues have done around small businesses.
I might just add to that, with the small business program that we run, partnerships with Connected Women and Bayan Academy. This is providing free training, often to individuals, about how they can use the free, or as we call it, organic part of our services to get their business online. And we've seen many cases of people being able to put a business up, whether they're freelance designers, virtual assistants, bakers, using free technology to connect to friends and family.
I mean, I understand, because your founder and believes in building the community, and I think this is one example where you're doing that. But on the other hand, I think that it's also important to disclose if you have any particular clients in government. Is the government working with you? Is the government paying Facebook for a particular service?
In terms of the partnerships that we work on with this small business training, these are done as a partnership where often the people we work with provide the reach or the venue as opposed to paying us to deliver it. We provide the services and the training at no cost to the individual.
So what particular department of government?
So we're working at a working level with DICT.
DICT.
We've also met with the Department of Small Business, so we're working with them on how we take what went to 5 cities last year to 7 cities, very much at the working level to get these things out as far as possible.
Maybe ask our media practitioners, maybe with Ms. Hontiveros, Ma'am, you've heard the statements of Secretary Harry Roque. What do you think about, well, of course, we need to be able to balance freedom of expression and also responsibility as media practitioners, for example, or government officials. What's your opinion, let's say, on fake news and how to be able to curtail it, and our responsibility as media practitioners, ma'am? Don't ask questions as well as you do, but you get the drift, right?
Not used to this. Well, ma'am, for CNN Philippines, we have a very strict standards and practices, which we adhere to. We believe in responsibility in journalism. If, for example, we come across information, we have a two-source rule, at the very least, two very reliable and independent sources. In terms of fake news, we are very careful about what we air because everything that comes into the newsroom, we check, counter-check, verify, double verify. We do our best to always make sure that what we air is very reliable information. Reliable meaning that it comes from an authority, for example, whether it is someone in government or a private individual who would be very knowledgeable.
Authority by government.
Yeah. Yes.
No,
Also.
yeah. Okay. So a two-source rule.
Yeah. Well, that actually that is one of the very basic rules in journalism. It is not just us in CNN Philippines practices that. All the other networks do the same thing, and that is a minimum. So, for example, if it is a one-source story, we're very, very careful about it. That's something Philippine media in general has been practicing over the last decades. Yeah.
So, what is your opinion now on, I mean, personally, about maybe you can define to me what fake news is. Okay, I mean, obviously it's almost like self-explanatory, hindi makatotohanan. But I'd like to hear it. I mean, from each of you that are here.
Like each of you does, so just say
Well, as most journalists understand, journalism is a field of verification. So that anything that anybody says cannot be taken for granted that it's correct, right? So, but then there are primary sources, secondary sources, tertiary sources, so that if it's primary source, then you take it for level of credibility, then it's higher compared to a tertiary source, for example. So if you hear it directly from a government official, for example, then you understand that since he's a primary source, he was there, he was present, he's making an announcement, then you understand that it's correct. Therefore, the level of it being fake news is much less than, for example, if you heard it from the wind, for example, right? So in CNN Philippines, as Pia was saying, we do have, I think, 600 pages of standard and practices, 65, okay, that it would take you, and there's an exam at the end of it after you read it, to make sure that the quality of the news that we come out with is correct in the sense that the source, you heard it directly from the source, or that it's been checked, double checked, so that sometimes we do get information that we find suspicious. We don't come up with it until we have 2 or 3 people saying the exact same thing and with the same circumstances. I think CNN Philippines is very responsible that way, because we understand that reputations are at stake and we owe a service to the people that we serve. We're very, very conscious of that, and I think the problem is not so much journalists, because journalists know what their responsibilities are. We are trained to make sure that everything is above board, on the level, and as much as possible has been verified over and over again. But then there are other people now that that because of the information explosion, and the other sources of information do not have the same kind of necessarily kind of training the journalists have.
But they also do provide a balance, right? I mean,
course.
somehow, because they also check mainstream media. Maybe I can ask Ms. Varona, who's a blogger but appears in mainstream media through the ABS-CBN website. If so, you have both sides. You're a blogger, you're an opinion maker, but you're also responsible because you are in a particular mainstream media site. So tell me, what your thoughts about this on all our discussion today?
Aside from being a thank you, Madam Chair. Aside from being a blogger, and I do write in-depth reports, I used to work with citizen journalism for 3 years, and the young people in this country are thirsty for knowledge, not only how to vet the information that they gather, how to process them, how to disseminate them in the best way possible, because they instinctively know that if they do it well, it probably increases the odds of problems in their communities getting attention and getting solved. So the youth are okay there. No? I totally agree with you when you say government officials do need to be held to a higher standard, no? Because the government gets mad. I mean, the president gets mad and he hurls fake news charges for every report that he doesn't agree with, even when these have clearly been vetted. But we have Secretary Roque, I'm sorry that he's not here now, defending on a spurious fake marketplace of ideas, the deliberate spread of disinformation by government officials, including, Secretary Martin, ASECs of the PCO, okay? So these are two different things. Do we want a legislation against them? No, but we do want government agencies to hold them accountable to the code of conduct and ethical behavior of government employees.
Ma'am, can you give me an example of possible disinformation that
Yes. It's deliberate and it's systematic. So one very major case back then where both Peter Lavinia and Mocha Uzon were working together, when Peter Lavinia, who was still then working with the government, spread this patently false graphic of a young child who had been raped and brutally murdered. And then he had where this information is concerned, it's usually the intent that's important. And Peter Lavinia spread this on his Facebook page, picked up by Mocha and very many people. And his intention was to denigrate human rights advocates who were then protesting EJKs in Metro Manila and telling them, bakit kayo hindi nag-iingay dito sa kawawang batang ni-rape? And that child wasn't even in the Philippines. So inexploit yung batang ni-rape ng pinatay ni Peter Lavinia when that child was a citizen of Brazil. And it took a couple of us journalists to rec that out. No, ito yung problema eh. Kahit mga fans ni President Duterte, and because I followed it on his Facebook page, were appealing to him to take it down because it was definitely not true. Did Lavinia even give them the time of day? No. He ignored it. He was a government official. And yun eh, when they use, the law is clear, they cannot separate their Facebook accounts from their duties as government officials because they're not supposed to follow one standard in the office and then follow another standard outside, as you know.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Well, as you know, Peter Lavinia is no longer the government, but he didn't issue an apology about that?
No, and the next thing we knew, Mocha Uzon was actually defending the spread of fake news by saying she's a blogger, not a journalist, and she doesn't have to vet information and all that. But she insults all the bloggers, including the millions of citizen journalists, including high school students who care about the fact that they need to vet information before they put it out. You will see citizen journalists correcting each other. pag misinformation, yung natisod, nagkamali, they will correct each other. They learn quickly. But when we get these messages from government officials, it encourages the deliberate spread of lies which never exist in a vacuum. They always come with a secondary campaign of harassing people on the internet who may express dissenting views.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I know that this is also a struggle by Secretary Andanar. Trying to maintain the peace with everybody. Everybody's like headstrong. But how do you deal, let's say, with instances like that? I know also Attorney Banag is very reasonable with a good head over her shoulders. But of course, with a very strong network and many different opinionated people. How will you answer what Ms. Varona stated? I mean, I'm sure you're also appalled when certain things like this come out. Sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't answer for Peter Lavinia because, number one, he's not here. He's no longer in government, and I don't work with him. Number two, I've already time and again reiterated that as far as the Presidential Communications Operations Office is concerned, we are very responsible in disseminating information using our official government media platforms, including PTV, including the Radyo Pilipinas, Philippine News Agency, and our on-the-ground information agency, which is the Philippine Information Agency. MOCA has a couple of programs under the PCOO. That is the DDS podcast and the Duterte Good News. Both programs are official PCOO programs. And as far as I'm concerned, all of the production, all of the stories that we have produced for MOCA in those two programs have been very good. And wala namang fake news na lumabas dun sa dalawang programa na sponsored by the Presidential Communications Operations Office.
Okay, so I've actually seen certain official PCOO postings, and I know you've been very diligent with your work. You've done a good job, even with PTV4. Basically, with the popularity of the president, you've revived the relevance of the station. So there, but I'm sure that there are also challenges within your organization. Maybe Ms. Banag, you can explain more clearly accountability of everybody in the PCOO, what your intention is, what you hope to do to be able to monitor yourselves.
Madam Chair, thank you for this opportunity. At the PCOO, we make sure, the Secretary makes sure that everything that goes out of our media platforms are vetted. And we have a distribution thread that studies or looks into whatever press releases that we have to put out for all of those information officers all over the country, to which these news items coming from the Presidential Communications is addressed. As to accountability, ma'am, we work with the DICT on the policy of the social media policy for all government employees or officials, and it's actually collection of all the laws that are already existing. And insofar as ASEC MOCA is concerned, if and when other people may see or may think that whatever she's putting out there is libelous, as it could, if she says something that would malign other people personally or officially, for that matter, then they can file a case against ASEC MOCA. And our office, Madam Senator, would actually opt not to give a definite definition of what fake news is. Because we have reservations, Madam Senator, that defining fake news as a state-level regulation could raise accompanying risks of a seemingly boundless government regulation and prohibition, which runs counter to freedom of speech and right to self-expression. With that said, Madam Chair, in our attempt to create or find a precise definition of fake news in this committee, we must also consider, we suggest that we consider the specific problems or harms fake news is doing to undermine our society's ability to participate in a rational discourse. And with that said, Madam Chair, we are not able, like CNN Philippines, we are not able to come up with a precise definition of fake news.
Okay, I know that you're being very cautious, but I see you agreeing, ma'am. You seem to agree with her, not to have with Secretary Banaag. You seem to agree that there's no clear-cut definition. Please state your position on this.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes if you say that what is fake to somebody might not necessarily be fake to somebody else. But there are certain rules that journalists go by, which is that if it comes from the government, if you have a document that shows that what you say verbally is correct, then you have to depend on it. You have to believe it, right? So, but there are certain parameters that journalists use to decide whether or not something can go on air or can go to print. I'm very squeamish about having to define something as right or wrong, true or not, because really, who's to say, right? But there are certain expectations so that when, for example, a high government official makes an announcement and then you check it and it turns out that there's no document to back up that policy, for example, or that his lower official says, no, actually hasn't been vetted, then we have a problem reporting the news because...
But you know what? We seem to make this more complicated than it is. Pag ako, okay, as an ordinary citizen, for example, pag sabi ko fake news, ibig sabihin, hindi totoo or may mali siya para magsinungaling. For example, what's totally fake? It snows in the Philippines. Okay, somebody can probably be a wise aleck and says, minsan nag-hail dito. But we know exactly what we're saying. There are certain things that are irrefutable. Okay, that's clear. But I know when you say, we have to be very careful because there are certain nuances. But there are also certain instances when you know there's a propaganda.
Yes.
And that is when
the line is blurred.
The line is blurred.
Yes.
Okay. So we have it. How do you determine intent and malice?
Yes.
Okay. So these are the things. But you go back to your safety measures by vetting it, by checking additional sources, etc. Of course, that our people have neither the time or the resources to sometimes double check. That's why it becomes toxic for some when especially when you have that much influence. But anyway, so going back to that, pinapahirap pa natin yung definition minsan. Pag sinabi natin fake news, hindi totoo. Pero syempre hindi totoo, mabigat din ang pwedeng maging basihan kung paano madedetermina yan. Pero hindi natin mapapagkaila, nasa revised penal code natin yan. Okay. So kung ang huwes ang magdedetermina kung ano yung totoo o hindi, sa tingin ko naman malalaman talaga kung may intensyon na malisyoso ang isang taong naghayag ng isang bagay na alam naman natin hindi totoo. Pero siguro, dahil kami nasa gobyerno, kayo ay media practitioners, tanungin natin ang academe kung paano siguro ang kanilang definisyon nito. Ma'am, Dr. Cheryl Soriano, De La Salle University.
I think crucial in the identification of what is fake news or disinformation is really intent, no? The intent to deceive, the capacity to create a piece of news with the intention to make it appear as real, but clearly, right? Clearly is false. Is an example of this. So there are many different kinds of this. For example, one is creating a parody. For example, changing the, as they mentioned earlier, changing the pretending to be Al Jazeera or pretending to be CNN, but in fact is a false site. The next example is, for example, taking a photograph that did not happen on that particular day, but making it appear as if it supports a particular argument or a situation for the purpose of creating a political sentiment or emotional sentiment from people. So it can vary in different ways, but I think crucial here is the intention to deceive.
Okay, so I think that's very important. There's malice and intention to deceive. Diba? Kasi sometimes it's very subjective, but there's a phone-in question from Senator Lacson. Kung paano ang workings ng page verification sa FB at kung makakatulong ito sa paglaban sa trolls at fake news. How can page verification in Facebook prevent trolling and spread the fake news? This is a question from Senator Lacson.
So this is in respect to the blue tick that you might see on someone's page to verify that they are who they say they are. That's something which is not automated. It involves specialist teams. Either, for instance, when it comes to news organizations, our media partnerships team will have a relationship with that organization to be able to verify that the people who are administering that page do properly represent that organization. And similarly, on the side of policymakers, we have a team that has a relationship with policymakers, including, for instance, senators here in the Philippines, who will authenticate that this page is owned and operated by either that individual or their staff. So it's a human connection rather than a machine that determines that something is authentic and verified.
And so if it's reported that it's not authentic, you will take it down?
We will in certain circumstances, and indeed there has been a case, I understand one of the senators who's not here today, who reported to us fairly recently, I think it was 24 pages that Senator Gordon reported to us 24 cases of, if you like, imposter accounts. And we took down, I think, all but one of them, because, yes, we were able to confirm that they were indeed inauthentic and attempting to represent Senator Gordon.
Misrepresent. I think one of my colleagues, Senator Soto's Facebook page was blocked also. But that was an authentic page. Are you familiar with this?
I'm not familiar. I don't know whether Ms. DV is. You are?
Yeah, I think you did. But anyway, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Anyone? Mr. Noko?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm gonna ask questions from our Facebook representative.
Okay, you can ask me. Then
yes,
I'll ask.
through you. Since it has been mentioned in the presentation, one is, do they see, it has been pointed out in some news reports, both international and local, about a state-sponsored misinformation. And Philippines has been cited along with Russia, Turkey, China, and North Korea to be maintaining cyber warrior or armies. In Korea, North Korea, they even have one community of cyber warriors, just influencing the news. Also in Russia.
In the Philippines, apparently we do have.
And the Philippines has been cited in some news reports.
Okay.
As also having that kind of machinery. So
right.
I want to find out from Facebook whether that is true.
Okay.
Or do they see such pattern?
Facebook, I'm sure that you know where all of the comments, interactions are coming from, if a particular area Have you investigated this allegation?
We certainly have investigated allegations around state-sponsored activity by Russia in respect of the US and the UK, which is my home country, and we have reported on both of those. In the US, as you'll be aware, our colleague and senior counsel Colin Stretch has given extensive evidence to the US Congress on what we found in respect of not necessarily state, but certainly Russian clusters of accounts and activity by something called the Internet Research Agency, which was spending money and running ads directed at American users of Facebook during the presidential election campaign. And we reported on that extensively. All that is in the public domain. Anybody can see it. I can also, we also looked at, in response to questions from parliamentarians in the UK, whether there was similar interference in respect of the EU referendum vote, which took place in June 2016. And the last act I undertook before I left the UK to move to this region was to let that parliamentary committee know that we had found no evidence of a similar cluster of activity targeting the UK from Russia. I know we can and do investigate whether there are actions that have been taken from attacking people or our network across a range of countries. I'm afraid I cannot tell you definitively what we found in respect of all of those countries that you've mentioned.
But there's been findings about Russian actors, apparently, right? Have you determined
that's
that?
on the record. In the US, we're happy to send you a link to our extensive evidence.
But do you have any particular official position on this assertion?
On what, sorry?
On supposed influence by Russian actors in the outcome of the 2016 elections in the US?
Yes, we have, and it's all in the public domain, and we can send that to you.
Well, what can you tell me?
Magandang umaga, Bansang Pilipinas.
Has been issued. Now, the decision to withdraw is because the ICC prosecutor violated the very basis by which the Philippines and 124 other countries gave their consent to become members of the ICC. This is the principle of complementarity. Ang ICC po, hindi po yan ang court of first instance. Yan po ay binuo ng mga kasapi ng ICC kasama ang Pilipinas para maging court of last resort. Gagalaw lang po dapat ang ICC kapag ang mga lokal na hukuman ay hindi gumagana. Sa kaso po ng Pilipinas, malinaw na malinaw, gumagana po ang ating mga hukuman at hindi po pwedeng makaiwas sa pananagutan ang kahit sino, kasama na po ang isang presidente. Alam naman po natin sa Pilipinas na yung immunity ay habang sila'y nakaupo lamang, 2 presidente na po ang kinulong natin immediately after ng kanilang termino. Patunay po na walang such a thing as immunity to anyone dito sa ating Pilipinas. Importante po kasi itong consent na ibinigay natin dahil wala naman pong bansa na voluntaryong magsusurrender ng kanilang soberenya at kasapi po sa soberenya yung jurisdiksyon ng mga hukuman na lumitis dun sa mga lumalabag sa batas ng Pilipinas at sa batas na pang-international. I hasten to add that in the Philippines, not only do we have a functioning judiciary, and I think no one can dispute that, we also have a domestic statute, which mirrors the crimes cognizable by the International Criminal Court. Ang pag-withdraw po natin sa ICC ay dahil nalabag yung ating basihan kung bakit tayo pumayag na maging miyembro ng ICC, at ito po ay dahil ang dapat na maglitis at mag-imbestiga kay Presidente kung merong saysay ang mga demanda na yan ay ang ating mga lokal na hukuman. Uulitin ko po, wala naman po dun sa 124 countries na kasapi ng ICC na pumayag na hindi nagagana ang kanilang mga domestic na mga hukuman. Lahat po sila pumayag. Pero court of last resort lang po ang ICC. Ang court of primary jurisdiction should be domestic courts. Now, I've been asked many times about the fact that I was at the forefront of the campaign to then convince President Aquino to sign up for the ICC. I can confirm this. In fact, perhaps I was the strongest lobbyist for membership in the ICC. I have no regrets for doing so, as I believe that there must be an end to impunity. But when I lobbied for Philippine membership into the ICC, it was because I knew it cannot be a substitute for domestic courts. Importante nga lang po na magkaroon tayo ng alternatibo kung hindi na gumagana ang mga lokal na mga hukuman. How do I feel about it? I'm already spokesperson. I have no personal opinion, but in this instance, I will make an exception. Yes, it saddens me because our membership to the ICC perhaps is my single most important achievement as a member of civil society, but I agree with the President. Hindi naman po pwede isang tabi yung soberenya at saka yung basihan ng consent to be bound dahil lamang sa gawain ng prosecutor. Hindi ko po ito sinasabi ngayon lang. Kung sinubaybayan niyo po yung sinabi ko sa meeting ng Assembly of State Parties, nag-warning na po ako doon na wag sana magpagamit sa mga politiko ang prosecutor dahil kung hindi po, kapag linabag ng prosecutor yung principle of complementarity, hindi po mag-aatubili ang Pilipinas na umalis sa International Criminal Court at narito na nga po tayo sa puntong ito, nagkaroon na ng desisyon ang ating presidente. Now, ang tingin ko po, mas maraming mawawala sa International Criminal Court sa ating pag-alis. Bakit po? Sa Southeast Asia, dadalawa na lang pong natitirang countries na miyembro ng ICC, Timor-Leste at saka Cambodia. Wala na pong ibang bansa na talagang aktibo sa pag-iimbita, pag-iinganyo sa ibang mga bansa sa Asia na maging kasapi ng ICC. Ngayong lumabas na po tayo, wala nang ibang bansa na mag-iinganyo sa Asia na sumapi ang ibang mga bansang sa Asia sa International Criminal Court. But this is a decision that, this is a development that the prosecutor should have considered when she decided to embark on preliminary examination. Sa akin po, mas malaki ang talo ng ICC at ng quest for justice sa buong daigdig dahil sa paglabag na ginawa ng prosecutor, nawala na po ng pinakamalakas na aliado sa kontinente ng Asia ang International Criminal Court dahil wala na pong magiging kasing lakas na supporter na bansa sa Asia kung hindi ang Pilipinas. So, to the ICC, to the Assembly of State Parties, they only have to thank the prosecutor for the end of our dream to achieve universal ratification for the ICC. My only hope is that this will not lead into an avalanche of countries wanting to get out from the ICC. Note that 3 other countries have given notice to withdraw from the ICC. 1 actually withdrew, Burundi. 2 others relented, but they have not said that their decision not to leave is permanent. Questions?
First question, Maricel Halili, TV5.
Hi sir, good morning.
Good morning.
Sir, yung tungkol po sa ICC, does it automatically mean na dismiss na rin yung preliminary examination following yung pag-withdraw natin sa Rome Statute?
Nakapagtataka nga po because talagang napakadaming ekspertong lumabas. Sa katunayan po, pwede po tayong umalis at mawawalang bisa po ang kaso o yung preliminary examination na sinimulan. Bakit po? Kasi ang preliminary examination, hindi naman po yan actual stage sa International Criminal Court. Pero may possibility bang magpatuloy? Meron din po. Kailan pwede magpatuloy yan? Kung sa loob ng 1 taon at meron pong 1-year withdrawal process, ay mag-proceed sa preliminary investigation ang prosecutor, pwede pong matuloy. Pero kapag hindi po siya nag-proceed within 1 year sa preliminary investigation, mababaliwala na po yung kaso o yung preliminary examination na sinimulan ng prosecutor. So ngayon po, walang kasiguruduhan. Ang katotohanan po niyan, bagamat ang dami ng mga ekspertong nagsasalita, hindi pa po natin alam kung ano maging epekto dyan dun sa preliminary examination kasi 1 taon nga po yung withdrawal process. Now, ganun pa man, malinaw po ang sinasabi ng Presidente nang hindi niya kikilalanin ang jurisdiksyon ng ICC sa kanyang pagkatao dahil mababiolate yung kanyang karapatan to due process dahil hindi nga na-publish ng gobyerno daw ni Presidente Aquino yung ICC Rome Statute in full. No? Now, that's of course a recognized principle in our domestic law. That's in the Constitution, and because international law automatically forms part of the laws of the land, the latest decision of the Supreme Court on the matter, Magallona versus Executive Secretary, says that the Constitution must prevail. Now, imposible rin po magkaroon ng jurisdiction over the person of the president. Sabihin na nating masampahan siya ng kaso, yung pag-aaresto po sa presidente depends wholly on cooperation. I don't think the Philippines will ever surrender him to the International Criminal Court. Sino po magpapasurrender sa kanya? Idadalawa lang yung bansa dito sa Southeast Asia, Timor-Leste and Cambodia. So unless pupunta po doon ng presidente na may kaso na siya sa International Criminal Court, hindi naman po siya maaresto. At ngayon po, merong isang presidente na kinasuhan ng ICC, gumagala-gala po sa mga teritoryo ng member parties, hindi rin inaaresto. So ang nangyari po rito, nagmumukhang inutil lang ang ICC sa ginawa ng kanyang prosecutor, mali po yung ganyang hakbang. Dahil ako po talaga, I would have seen a strong and credible ICC na na-undermine po ni prosecutor dahil dito sa kanyang walang saysay na ginawang ng preliminary examination, knowing na napakalakas naman ng hudikatura at ng sistema ng katarungan dito sa Pilipinas.
Sir, does it mean that we will still follow Article 127 of the Rome Statute? Kasi nakalagay dun sa letter kahapon na 1 year upon notice yung pwede tayo mag-withdraw. But then again, sabi ni Secretary Sal Panelo, effective immediately na raw yung withdrawal. So,
All I can confirm is pacta sunt servanda. Of course, we recognize the principle, no, applicable to withdrawal. But the president from the beginning has said they will never acquire jurisdiction over his person. So this is actually a question which is moot and academic. Kahit ano pang gawin ng ICC, hindi magpapasailalim ng jurisdiksyon ang Presidente Duterte.
Sir, some critics are saying that this is parang a sign of cowardice on the part of Malacanang because you're not willing to participate on the
Unang-una po,
procedure.
hindi natin sinabi na hindi na tayo magpa-participate. Ang sinabi lang natin, hindi magkakaroon ng jurisdiksyon sa pagkatao ni Presidente. Pangalawa, hindi po Pilipinas lang ang umalis sa ICC. May 3 na pong nagbigay ng notice, isa tuluyan ng umalis, Burundi. Yun din po yung estado ata ng prosecutor, kung di ako nagkakamali. Baka magkamali ako dyan, I'm not sure. Pero alam ko, isa sa 3 bansa na nagbigay ng notice ay yung bansa mismo ng prosecutor. No? Pangatlo po, hindi naman po universal ratification. Hindi po lahat ng bansa sa daigdig ay miyembro. Ang Estados Unidos hindi po miyembro niyan. Dahil nga, ang Estados Unidos sa mulat-mula, hindi po gusto na napakakapangyarihan ng prosecutor, po pwede siyang magsimula ng preliminary examination, nagiging political issue domestically, and yet wala namang pananagutan yung prosecutor. Ito po talaga ang dahilan kung bakit sa mulat-mula, ang sabi ng mga Amerikano, hindi sila magiging miyembro ng ICC because the prosecutor has absolutely no accountability to anyone. At yan nga pong nangyari sa kaso natin. No? Binigyan niya ng bala ang mga politikal na kalaban ng ating presidente, pinuritize niya ang proseso, at hindi po yung pag-alis ng presidente ang makaka-apekto doon sa ICC. Yung action po na ginawa ng prosecutor na linabag niya mismo yung prinsipyo ng complementarity. Show of hands. Sino ba ho talaga nagsasabi na hindi gumagana ang hukuman sa ating bayan? Sige nga po, dito sa press corps, sino po magsasabi niyan? Wala po, for the record. So hindi ko po talaga maintindihan anong pumasok na espiritu dyan sa prosecutor na yan at sinabi niya na domestic courts the Philippine courts are unable and unwilling.
Sir, last, how will this affect, sir, the impression of the international community sa Pilipinas following yung ating action? Aren't you concerned?
Hindi po. Ang Amerika hindi miyembro ng ICC. May epekto ba ho yan sa imahe ng Amerika? Wala po. Ang Russia, hindi po miyembro ng ICC. May epekto ba ho yan? Ang China, may epekto ba ho yan? Again, there are 198 countries in this planet. Only 124 became members. Less 2 now, 122. Kasama na po dyan yung mga maliliit na bansa ng Pacific, kaya marami. Pero kung titignan nyo po yan, ang composition niya, it's predominantly a European, a Latin American, an African, and Pacific States Court. Wala po halos Asia na miyembro ng International Criminal Court.
Okay. Pia Gutierrez, ABS-CBN, to be followed by Sandra Aguinaldo, GMA7.
Sir, hingi lang po ako ng clarification because I remember, sir, na nagbigay kayo ng explanation dito on the processes ng sa ICC. Pero yung preliminary examination that you are objecting to, isn't that a matter of procedure that because the ICC has received an information that they have to act on it?
Hindi po. Meron po nagdemanda laban sa Santo Papa for sexual abuses. Hindi naman po nag-preliminary examination ang prosecutor. Bagamat hindi po ito kabahagi pa ng formal na proseso, ito po ay isang mensahe, no, na isa sa mga kaso na pag-aaralan ng prosecutor ito. At sinasabi nga namin, dapat yan, bago pa siya nag-preliminary examination, nalaman na niya na gumagana ang sistemang katarungan dito sa Pilipinas.
Pero sir, wouldn't the aim of the preliminary examination is to determine whether they have jurisdiction over the case?
That may be the case. Wrong political move, Madam Prosecutor, and I'm addressing you wherever you are. You just gave countries confirmation on why they should not become a member of the ICC because you have shown that you can exercise your power without accountability. You are to blame if the ICC will become part of history. You are to blame if ICC becomes part of the dustbin of history.
So for the record, sir, ano po ba dapat ang ginawa ng prosecutor?
Dinismiss outright yan. Dahil alam naman niya gumagana mga hukuman. Hello, alam ng lahat ng tao ang partisipasyon ko sa ratification ng ICC. Alam nilang may nakaupo tayong hukom sa ICC. Alam nila yung mga estudyante ko prosecutors dyan sa ICC. Alam nilang estado ng katarungan dito sa Pilipinas. So kung talagang in-apply niya ang prinsipyo ng complementarity, hindi niya ginalaw yan. Ginalaw niya yan ay patunay na pinupolitika niya ang ating presidente. Lalong-lalo na ang naghain, politiko. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that a case is politicized when a politician has filed it. It should have been thrown to the wastebasket instantly.
Sir, another question. Nabanggit po dun sa statement ni Presidente kahapon that the Rome Statute is not enforceable in the Philippines because it was not published in the official gazette or a newspaper of
I
general
can confirm
circumstance.
that's the personal conviction of the president that's pursuant to the case of Tañada versus Tuvera.
Pero sir, following that thinking, sir, ano pa po bang mga international treaties ang hindi enforceable sa Pilipinas dahil hindi siya na-publish?
Well, alam niyo po, ito kasi kakaiba. Kasi ito lang yung tratado na nagbibigay parusa sa mga krimen. So this being criminal in nature, it should have been published. Now, because of your question, yes, the only other treaty that I know, wala kasi even the Torture Convention enjoins member states to come up with domestic legislation criminalizing torture. So sa pagkakaalam ko po, yung Convention Against Genocide, ganun din po. Kinakailangan bumuo ng mga batas na pinaparusahan ng genocide. Ito lang po talaga yung tratado na nagbibigay ng isang criminal code na kinakailangan talaga na na-publish for due process sake.
So sino sir dapat ang magpa-publish nun? Isn't that the government dapat?
That should have been done by President Aquino since he ratified it.
Okay.